The smell hit me first, garlic butter and expensive cologne mixing with the sharp tang of disinfectant I'd used to wipe down the marble tables. My feet throbbed inside shoes held together with duct tape, the kind of pain that starts as a whisper at hour 3 and becomes a scream by hour 12. I pressed my palm against the small of my back, feeling the familiar ache settle into my spine like an old friend I'd rather forget. "Table 7 needs water," Marcus barked from behind the bar, not bothering to look up from the wine glass he was polishing to impossible brightness. Everything at Celestino's had to shine. The silverware, the floors, even us servers were expected to glow with manufactured enthusiasm, no matter how dead we felt inside. I grabbed the crystal pitcher, its weight familiar in my exhausted grip, and wove through the dining room. Friday nights were always brutal, but tonight felt different. There was a charge in the air, a tension I couldn't name, the usual clientele, lawyers celebrating wins, hedge fund managers entertaining mistresses, old money proving they still had it. Seemed subdued, voices lower than normal, eyes cutting toward the private section in the back. That's when I saw him. Not fully, not at first. Just fragments, the edge of a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, cufflinks catching the low amber light, a hand, masculine, powerful, with a signet ring that looked ancient, resting on the white tablecloth. His section was cordoned off, separate from the rest of the dining room by a frosted glass partition that turned him into a shadow, a suggestion of danger rather than a complete picture. 2 men flanked the entrance to his area. Not servers, not guests. Their suits were different, functional, built to hide things. Their eyes never stopped moving, cataloging exits, tracking hands, measuring threats. I'd seen men like this before, in the neighborhood where I grew up, before foster care scattered us like seeds in a storm. Men who made their living ensuring other men stayed alive. "Don't stare," Marcus hissed, suddenly at my elbow. His fingers dug into my arm with surprising strength. "And for God's sake, don't go over there." "I wasn't planning to. Mr. Castellano handles that section personally, no one else. Understand?" I nodded, but curiosity had already sunk its teeth in. Who was important enough to require armed babysitters at dinner? I'd served celebrities, politicians, even a man who'd been on the cover of Forbes. None of them had ever warranted this level of security. The night crawled forward. My section filled and emptied, filled again. I smiled until my face hurt, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, pretended not to notice wandering hands, or the way some men looked at me like I was part of the menu. The tips were decent. They had to be, or I'd lose the apartment. And then where would I go? Back to the shelter? Back to sleeping in my car? By 10:30, most of the dining room had cleared. My feet had progressed beyond pain into numbness, which was almost worse. I was wiping down table 12 when I heard it. A crash from the kitchen, followed by rapid-fire Italian that sounded more like violence than language. Mr. Castellano burst through the kitchen doors, his round face purple with rage. "Incompetent. All of you." That was for Mr. Vitale, you understand? For him. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Dante Vitale, the man they whispered about in the same breath as words like family and organization and other euphemisms for a world most of us pretended didn't exist. Someone needs to take this out now. Castellano's eyes swept the kitchen, landing on the only other server present, Maria, who was 7 months pregnant and looked ready to cry. "I'll do it," I heard myself say. The words came out before wisdom could stop them. Castellano's eyes narrowed. "You?" "No, not you." "You're not—" He stopped himself, jaw working. "Fine, but you keep your eyes down. You don't speak unless spoken to, and you don't exist in that room. Capiche?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He thrust a tray at me, sea bass in a delicate lemon caper sauce, sides that probably cost more than I made in a day. The plate was still hot, almost burning through the cloth napkin wrapped around its base. My hands shook as I lifted it, suddenly aware of how much trouble I'd just volunteered for. The walk to the private section felt like miles. The 2 guards watched me approach, their expressions carved from granite. One of them, tall, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, stepped forward, blocking my path. "Castellano sent me," I managed, hating how small my voice sounded. "The main course." He studied me for a long moment, eyes cataloging everything, my worn shoes, the stain on my apron I couldn't quite scrub out, the way I held myself like I was trying to disappear. Whatever he saw must have passed some invisible test, because he stepped aside, nodding to his partner to open the frosted glass door. The temperature in the private room was different. Cooler, despite the candles burning on the single-occupied table. The space was designed for intimacy, for conversations that couldn't happen in the light. And there, finally whole instead of fragmented, sat Dante Vitale. He was younger than I expected. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, with dark hair silvered at the temples and a face that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so hard. His suit was midnight blue, not charcoal like I'd thought, and it fit him like it had been born there. But it was his eyes that stopped me, dark, almost black, and focused on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Your meal, sir," I said, eyes down like Castellano had ordered. I could feel him watching me as I approached, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run. The tray felt impossibly heavy. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I set the plate down as gently as I could, but my hands were shaking so badly that the silverware rattled. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. "Nervous?" His voice was lower than I expected, with an accent that suggested Italian roots refined by American schools. "No, sir. Just tired." The lie tasted bitter. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. I raised my eyes, meeting his gaze, and felt something shift in my chest. Up close, I could see details I'd missed from across the room, a thin scar above his right eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his mouth curved with something that might have been amusement, or might have been something darker. "What's your name?" "Elena." Another lie. Elena was easier than explaining that my real name, Lily Martinez, was attached to too many bad memories, too many case files in the foster system. "Elena." He repeated it like he was tasting it, testing it. "You're new." 3 months. I should leave. Every instinct told me to step back, to retreat to safety. But I was trapped by his gaze, by the weight of his attention. "Do you like working here?" What a strange question. "It pays the bills." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval? Recognition? "Honest. I appreciate that." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." "I can't. I'm working, and Mr. Castellano works for me." The words were soft, but they hit like a bomb. "Everything in this restaurant works for me, including you, Elena. Now sit." My legs gave out more than I consciously chose to obey. I sank into the chair, acutely aware of how out of place I was. My stained apron, my tangled hair escaping its bun, the smell of kitchen grease that probably clung to me. Across from me, Dante Vitale sat like a king in his castle, perfectly composed, perfectly controlled. He didn't touch his food. Instead, he watched me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You're afraid of me." Should I be? The corner of his mouth lifted. "Most people are. But you're still here. Why?" "You told me to sit." I tell a lot of people to do a lot of things. Not all of them obey. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something with cedar and smoke, expensive and intoxicating. "You interest me, Elena. Do you know why?" I shook my head, not trusting words. "Because you're invisible. I watched you tonight, moving through the dining room like a ghost. People look through you, not at you. That's a rare skill." His eyes traveled over my face, lingering on details I wished I could hide. "But I see you. Every broken piece." My throat tightened. "I should go." "Not yet." He reached across the table, and I froze, certain he was going to touch me. But his hand stopped just short of mine, hovering there like a promise or a threat. "I'm going to make you an offer, Elena. And before you refuse, I want you to think very carefully about what you have to lose." This was it. This was the moment good sense screamed at me to run, to call for help, to do anything but sit here with this dangerous man in his private room. But I was so tired of being invisible, tired of barely surviving, tired of wondering if tomorrow would be the day I finally broke. "What offer?" My voice came out as a whisper. He smiled then, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Not because it was cruel, but because it was genuine. "Work for me. Not here, serving tables. Something better. I need someone invisible, someone people underestimate, someone hungry enough to take a risk. I don't understand. You don't have to. Not yet." He pulled back, reaching inside his jacket. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought he was going for a gun, but when his hand emerged, it held only a business card, thick, expensive paper with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. "Think about it. Call me when you decide." He stood, and I scrambled to my feet, nearly knocking over my chair. He was taller than I'd realized, his presence somehow filling the entire room. One of the guards appeared at the door, a phantom responding to a signal I hadn't seen. "The meal was excellent," Dante said, his tone shifting to something more formal, more distant. "My compliments to the chef." He walked past me, close enough that I felt the heat of him, smelled that intoxicating cologne, close enough that I could have reached out and touched him, though I didn't dare. The guard followed, and then they were gone, leaving me alone in the private room with a cooling plate of sea bass and a business card that felt like it was burning a hole in my palm. I stumbled back to the main dining room in a daze. Castellano was waiting, his eyes sharp with suspicion. "Well, any problems?" "No." He said the meal was excellent. Good. But he didn't look relieved. If anything, he looked more worried. "Go home, Elena. It's late." I cleared the rest of my section on autopilot, my mind replaying every word, every look. The business card was tucked into my apron pocket, a dangerous secret pressed against my hip. I should throw it away. I should forget this ever happened, but when I finally clocked out and stepped into the cold November night, the first thing I did was pull out that card. Under the harsh glow of the streetlight, I stared at those silver numbers and felt something shift inside me. Something reckless, something desperate, something that whispered that maybe, just maybe, being invisible wasn't the only way to survive. I should have walked away. Should have gone back to my tiny apartment with its leaking ceiling and its locks that didn't quite work. Should have forgotten about Dante Vitale and his dangerous eyes and his offer that couldn't possibly be legitimate. Instead, I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the numbers, trembling. One call. That's all it would take to step off the cliff into free fall. The phone was ringing before I could change my mind. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then a voice, smooth as aged whiskey. "I knew you'd call. Tomorrow, noon. I'll send a car." The line went dead before I could respond, before I could ask the 100 questions crowding my throat. I stared at my phone, the screen dark now, reflecting my pale face back at me. What had I just done? The walk to my apartment building felt different that night. The shadows seemed deeper, the streetlights dimmer. Every sound made me jump, a cat knocking over a trash can. Distant sirens. The rumble of the subway beneath my feet. I clutched my jacket tighter, the business card still in my pocket like evidence of a crime I hadn't yet committed. My building was in the kind of neighborhood real estate agents called up and coming, which meant poor people were being slowly pushed out by coffee shops we couldn't afford. The elevator was broken again, so I climbed 4 flights of stairs, each step a small agony on my destroyed feet. The hallway smelled like Mrs. Chen's cooking, ginger and soy sauce, and for a moment, I felt almost normal, almost safe. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sank onto the futon that served as both couch and bed. The space was barely 300 square feet, a studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom the size of a closet, and a window that overlooked a brick wall. But it was mine. I'd fought for every square inch of it, worked doubles and triples, survived on ramen and hope. Now I was risking it all for a phone call to a man I didn't know. A dangerous man. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark, watching headlights sweep across my ceiling, listening to the couple upstairs fight, to the baby next door cry, to all the sounds of life being lived in tiny, desperate boxes. When dawn finally crept through my window, I felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything but a strange, humming anticipation. The morning passed in slow motion. I showered, standing under water that never got quite hot enough, washing away the smell of the restaurant. I tried on 5 different outfits, not that I had many to choose from, before settling on jeans and a sweater that only had one small hole, easily hidden. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, really looked, and saw what Dante must have seen. A woman barely holding on, all sharp edges and shadows, 26 years old, but aged by survival. At 11:30, I went downstairs to wait. The car arrived exactly at noon. It was black, sleek, with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Nothing about it screamed mob car, but nothing about it suggested legitimate business either. It simply radiated money and power, so out of place on my street that neighbors stopped to stare. The driver emerged, one of the guards from last night, the tall one with the scar. He opened the back door without a word, his face as expressive as stone. I hesitated, my hand on the car frame, every instinct screaming at me to run. This was it, the point of no return. I got in. The interior smelled like leather, and that same cedar smoke cologne. The seats were obscenely comfortable, the kind of luxury I'd forgotten existed. The guard closed the door, sealing me in, and slid behind the wheel. We pulled away from the curb, and I watched my building disappear in the side mirror, wondering if I'd ever see it again. We drove in silence. I tried to track the route, to memorize turns, but the city blurred past the tinted windows, familiar neighborhoods transforming into unfamiliar ones. We crossed the river, headed uptown, into areas where the buildings got taller and the streets got cleaner. Old money neighborhoods, where doormen wore uniforms and women walked tiny dogs worth more than cars. Finally, we pulled up to a building that looked like it had been carved from marble and ambition. The guard opened my door, gesturing for me to exit. My legs felt unsteady as I stood, looking up at the facade that disappeared into the sky. "Penthouse," the guard said. The first words he'd spoken. "Mr. Vitale is expecting you." The lobby was all polished granite and modern art I didn't understand. A woman sat behind a desk that probably cost more than I made in a year, her expression pleasant but distant. She didn't ask my name, didn't ask my business. She simply nodded toward the elevators, like she'd been expecting me. The elevator was mirrored, showing me infinite versions of myself, each one looking more out of place than the last. I watched the numbers climb, 30 floors, 40, 50. My ears popped. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack through. The doors opened directly into an apartment. Not a hallway, not a foyer with multiple units, just an apartment. His apartment. The entire 52nd floor. "Come in, Elena." His voice came from somewhere deeper in the space. I stepped out of the elevator, and it closed behind me with a soft whisper, cutting off my escape route. The penthouse was all floor-to-ceiling windows, offering views of the city that made me dizzy. Modern furniture in shades of gray and black, art that looked expensive because it was, everything clean and sharp and utterly impersonal. Except for him. Dante stood by the windows, backlit by noon sun that turned him into a silhouette, a shadow king surveying his domain. He'd traded last night's suit for something more casual. Black pants, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and traced with scars. No tie. Top button undone. Somehow, the informality made him more dangerous, not less. "You came." He turned, and the light caught his face. In daylight, he looked different. Not softer, but more real. More human. The lines around his eyes suggested he smiled sometimes, even if he wasn't smiling now. "You sent a car." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Most people would have run." He moved toward me, each step deliberate, controlled. "But you're not most people, are you, Elena?" "I don't know what I am. Honest again. I like that." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "Are you hungry?" The question was so unexpected that I almost laughed. "What?" "Lunch." Have you eaten? He gestured toward a dining area I hadn't noticed, where a table was set for two, dishes covered with silver domes. I thought we should talk properly. Hard to negotiate on an empty stomach. Negotiate. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I didn't fully understand. But my stomach growled, betraying me. I hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. A stale bagel someone left in the break room. I could eat, I admitted. His smile was quick, almost boyish. It transformed his face completely, made him look young and dangerous and utterly compelling. Good. Come. He pulled out a chair for me and I sat, feeling like an imposter in a play I didn't know the lines to. He sat across from me, lifting the domes to reveal food that belonged in a magazine. Fresh pasta with truffle shavings, salad that actually looked like it came from a garden, bread still warm from some oven I'd never see. You don't have to be afraid to eat, he said, serving me portions I'd never finish. I didn't bring you here to starve you. Why did you bring me here? The question escaped before I could stop it. He set down the serving spoon, his eyes finding mine. Because I meant what I said. I need someone invisible, someone hungry, someone with nothing to lose. Everyone has something to lose. Do they? He leaned back, studying me. Tell me, Elena, what would you lose if you walked away from your life right now? Your apartment? Your job at Celestino's? Those things that barely keep you alive? The words cut because they were true. I had nothing. I was nothing. Just another invisible girl in a city full of them, working herself to death for the privilege of existing in a room smaller than his bathroom. I see you understand. His voice was gentler now, almost kind. I'm not offering you a job, Elena. I'm offering you a life. A real one. With money, security, protection, everything you've never had. In exchange for what? I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. What could I possibly give you? Your invisibility. Your ability to be overlooked, underestimated. There are places I can't go, conversations I can't overhear, information I can't access. But you... He tilted his head, considering. People don't see you as a threat. They wouldn't know to guard themselves around you. Understanding hit me like cold water. You want me to spy for you. I want you to observe, to listen, to report back what you see and hear. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the dark liquid. Nothing illegal. Nothing that would put you in direct danger. Just eyes and ears in places I need them. And if I say no, then you walk away. The car takes you home. We never speak of this again. His expression was unreadable. But you won't say no, Elena, because you're already thinking about what this could mean. How it could change everything. He was right. God help me. He was right. I was thinking about it. About real money. About security. About not having to choose between food and electricity. About not being invisible anymore. At least not to him. Who are you really? I asked. Not the restaurant owner story. The truth. You know the truth. You knew it the moment you saw my security last night. He set down his glass. My family has been in this city for 4 generations. We built empires, legal and otherwise. We protect our interests, take care of our people, and eliminate threats. That's who I am. A criminal. A businessman operating in gray areas. His eyes hardened slightly. Don't pretend the legal world is any cleaner, Elena. The only difference is paperwork. I should have been horrified. Should have stood up, demanded to leave, called the police. But sitting in his penthouse, eating food I could never afford, looking into eyes that saw me when everyone else looked through me, I felt something else entirely. Something dangerous and reckless and alive. What would I have to do? My voice was barely a whisper. He leaned forward, and the air between us shifted, became charged with possibility. For now, keep working at Celestino's. Be exactly who you've always been. But watch. Listen. Tell me who meets with whom, what conversations happen in corners, what deals are made over dessert. The restaurant is, shall we say, a popular meeting place for certain business interests. You want me to spy on your own restaurant? I want to know who's using my establishment for their negotiations. Knowledge is power, Elena, and I make sure I always have more than anyone else. He reached across the table, and this time, his fingers brushed mine. The contact sent electricity up my arm. In exchange, I'll pay you. Real money. Enough to leave that apartment, that job, that life behind. Enough to finally breathe. His touch was warm, almost gentle, at odds with everything he represented. I should pull away, should maintain distance, but I didn't. I sat frozen, caught in his gravity like a moon trapped in orbit around a dark planet. Think about it, he said softly. Take today, tomorrow, as long as you need. But Elena? His fingers tightened on mine, just enough to send a shiver down my spine. Once you say yes, there's no going back. You'll be mine, under my protection, my responsibility. That means something in my world. It means everything. The word mine hung in the air between us, loaded with meanings I was afraid to examine too closely. This wasn't just a job offer. This was something else, something that made my pulse quicken and my stomach clench with equal parts fear and anticipation. I need to think, I managed. Of course. He released my hand, and I felt the loss of his touch like a physical thing. Marco will take you home, but Elena? Don't take too long to decide. Opportunity doesn't wait, and neither do I. The drive back was a blur. I sat in the back of that expensive car, my mind racing, replaying every word, every look, every moment his skin had touched mine. The guard, Marco, apparently, drove in silence, giving me space to spiral. When we pulled up to my building, the contrast was almost offensive. From penthouse to poverty in 30 minutes. Marco opened my door, handed me a black envelope, and drove away before I could ask questions. Inside the envelope was cash. More cash than I'd ever seen in my life. Enough for 3 months' rent, or food for 6 months, or a new start somewhere far from here. And a note, written in strong, slashing handwriting, an advance. Good faith. Call me when you decide. D. I stood on my crumbling stoop, holding more money than I'd made in half a year, and felt the last of my resistance crumble. He'd already bought me, and we both knew it. The only question was whether I'd admit it. That night, I lay in bed counting the money, feeling the crisp bills between my fingers, imagining all the things I could do with it. All the ways my life could be different. Better. Less impossible. At 2 a.m., I picked up my phone. His number was still there, burned into my recent calls. I typed, "I'm in." The response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. "Good girl. Tomorrow night. Wear something nice. I'm taking you to dinner." I stared at those words, at "good girl," at the casual command, at the assumption that I'd obey. I should have been angry, should have told him where to shove his dinner invitation. Instead, I felt heat spread through my chest, dangerous and addictive. "What time?" I typed back. 8. Marco will pick you up. And Elena, don't be afraid. I protect what's mine. There it was again. That word. Mine. I was in so much trouble, and the worst part was, I didn't want to escape. I spent the entire next day in a state of anxious energy that made my hands shake and my stomach twist. The money from Dante sat hidden in my freezer, a trick I'd learned in foster care, where the least likely place was sometimes the safest. I'd counted it 3 times, $5,000, more than I'd saved in 2 years of working myself to exhaustion. At 6 p.m., I stood in front of my closet, staring at the limited options with growing panic. "Wear something nice," he'd said. But nice was relative when your entire wardrobe came from thrift stores and clearance racks. I settled on a black dress I'd bought for a job interview that never happened. Simple, a little loose, but it would have to do. I paired it with the only heels I owned, borrowed from a roommate 3 apartments ago who I'd lost touch with. In the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. I'd washed my hair twice, used the expensive conditioner I saved for special occasions, even attempted makeup with a YouTube tutorial playing on my cracked phone screen. The result was acceptable. Not beautiful, not transformed, but maybe not quite so invisible. At 7:50, I went downstairs to wait. The car arrived at exactly 8. Marco emerged, his expression unchanging as he took in my appearance. If he had opinions about my dress or my shoes or the fact that I was clearly out of my depth, he kept them to himself. He simply opened the door and waited. This time, I noticed details I'd missed before, the way he scanned the street before letting me enter. The slight bulge under his jacket that suggested a weapon, the earpiece partially hidden by his hair. This wasn't just a driver, this was a soldier, and I was cargo precious enough to require protection. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel strangely valued. We drove to a part of the city I'd never been to, where the buildings were older but grander, where history soaked into the cobblestone streets. Marco pulled up to a restaurant with no sign, just a red door with a brass knocker shaped like a lion. He opened my door, gestured for me to exit, and to my surprise, followed me to the entrance. He knocked twice. The door opened immediately. Inside was dim, intimate, all dark wood and candlelight. A woman in an elegant black suit appeared instantly, her smile warm, but her eyes sharp as she assessed me. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Vitale is waiting." She knew my real name, not Elena. Lily Martinez, the name I'd tried to leave behind with everything else from my past. My blood ran cold. The woman led me through the restaurant, only half full, with guests who spoke in low voices and barely looked up as we passed. Private booths lined the walls, each one offering seclusion and shadows. We climbed a staircase to a second floor I hadn't known existed, and there, in a private dining room with windows overlooking the city, sat Dante. He stood as I entered, and the sight of him stole my breath. He wore a dark gray suit that made his eyes look almost black, his hair swept back, a watch on his wrist that probably cost more than my car had before it died. But it was the way he looked at me, really looked like I was the only thing in the room worth his attention, that made my knees weak. Lily. My real name in his mouth sounded different. Intimate. "You look beautiful. You know my real name." It came out as an accusation. "I know everything." He moved toward me, taking my hand and bringing it to his lips. The kiss was brief, formal, but it sent fire racing up my arm. "Did you think I'd make an offer without knowing exactly who I was dealing with?" Lily Marie Martinez, born in St. Mary's Hospital. Mother died in childbirth, father unknown. Foster care from infancy, 7 different homes before you aged out at 18. Worked 3 jobs to put yourself through community college, dropped out after a year because you couldn't afford both food and tuition. Each word was a knife, cutting open parts of myself I'd sewn shut. "Stop. You've been invisible your whole life, Lily. Not because you chose it, but because the world decided you didn't matter." He pulled out my chair, his hand lingering on my shoulder. "I'm telling you that you matter. To me." I sat, because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. He took the seat across from me, and a waiter appeared with wine, red, expensive, poured into glasses that caught the candlelight like captured rubies. "I don't understand you," I said, my voice barely steady. "You don't know me. Why would you care?" "Because I recognize hunger when I see it." He lifted his glass, waiting for me to do the same. "Not for food, Lily. For more. For better. For a life that means something beyond survival. I've seen that hunger in the mirror my entire life. You?" I almost laughed. "You have everything. Now. Not always." His eyes darkened with something that might have been memory. My father was a soldier in the Vitale family. Low level, expendable. He died when I was 10, a bullet meant for someone more important. My mother cleaned houses to feed us. I wore hand-me-downs and went to bed hungry more nights than not. The revelation stunned me. "But you're the head of the family now, yes." He set down his glass, because I was hungry enough to take it. Smart enough to see opportunities others missed. Ruthless enough to do what needed to be done. I clawed my way up from nothing, Lily. Just like you're going to. I'm not ruthless. No. But you're a survivor. That's better. He leaned forward, his intensity pinning me in place. Ruthlessness burns out. Survival? That's a fire that never dies. The waiter appeared with the first course, something delicate and artistic that I was almost afraid to eat. Dante watched me take the first bite, his expression unreadable. "Tell me about foster care," he said. Which home was the worst? The question caught me off guard. People never asked about my past. They either didn't care, or didn't want to know. The third one, the Hendersons. They took in kids for the money, kept us like we were inventory. 5 of us in one room, locks on the kitchen cabinets, food measured out like we might steal it. Did you? Steal food? I met his eyes. Yes, all the time. I got good at it. His smile was approval and understanding mixed. Good. Never apologize for surviving. Is that what you tell yourself? When you do? Whatever it is you do. I don't apologize for anything, Lily. I act, I accept the consequences, I move forward. He paused, studying me. Does it bother you? What I am. I thought about lying, about saying yes, about maintaining some moral high ground. But sitting across from him, remembering the cash in my freezer, knowing I'd already accepted his money, what was the point? I don't know. Maybe it should. But I keep thinking about how the legal world hasn't done anything for people like me. Foster care was legal. Poverty wages are legal. Eviction for being $10 short on rent is legal. So maybe your way isn't worse. Just more honest. Careful, Lily. His voice dropped lower, intimate. You're starting to sound like you belong in my world. Maybe I do. The wine was making me brave, or maybe it was his attention, his interest, the way he looked at me like I mattered. What happens now? You said I'd spy for you at the restaurant. When do I start? Tomorrow night. You work the Friday shift, yes? When I nodded, he continued. There's a meeting happening. Table 16, 9 p.m. 3 men, Anthony Russo, James Chen, Marcus DeMarco. They're negotiating a contract for the ports, trying to cut my family out. I need to know the details. Numbers, timeline, who's backing them. How am I supposed to get that close? I'm just a server. Exactly. You're furniture to them. Invisible. They won't guard their words around you. He pulled a small device from his pocket, something that looked like a pen. Keep this in your apron. It records audio. Clear the table slowly, linger nearby. They won't even notice you're there. I took the pen, feeling its weight. And if they do notice? They won't. But if something goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a moment, you walk away. You text this number. He slid a card across the table with a different number than before. And Marco will be there in under 5 minutes. Your safety is more important than any information. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why do you care if I'm safe? He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching my face like he was looking for something specific. When he spoke, his voice was different. Lower, more raw. Because you're mine now, Lily. I told you that means something in my world. It means I protect you. It means anyone who hurts you answers to me. It means you don't have to be invisible anymore, except when it serves us both. That word again. Mine. It should have made me angry, should have triggered all my defenses about independence and autonomy. But instead, it made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Wanted. I don't understand this, I whispered. Us. Whatever this is. Neither do I. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His touch was warm, solid, real. I don't make a habit of getting personally involved with assets, but from the moment I saw you in that restaurant, exhausted and invisible and still fighting, I knew you were different. Different how? You remind me of who I used to be. Before the power, before the money, when I was just a hungry kid who refused to stay down. His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. I want to see what you become, Lily. When you're not just surviving anymore, when you have room to breathe, to grow, to be more than the world told you could be. The intimacy of the moment was almost unbearable. I wanted to pull away, to protect myself from the inevitable hurt that came from trusting people. But I also wanted to lean in, to close the distance between us, to let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone actually saw me. The dinner continued through more courses, each one more elaborate than the last. Dante told me about the restaurant business, the legitimate side at least, and asked about my dreams, my plans, the things I'd wanted before life had beaten them out of me. He listened like my words mattered, like I was telling him secrets worth keeping. By the time dessert arrived, something with chocolate and gold leaf that seemed too beautiful to eat, I felt drunk on more than wine. I felt drunk on attention, on possibility, on the dangerous fantasy that this could be real. "I should tell you something," Dante said, as the waiter cleared our plates. "About tomorrow night. About the men you'll be listening to." The shift in his tone made me focus. "What about them?" "Anthony Russo is connected to the Calabrese family. They've been trying to expand into our territory for the past year. This meeting, if they're successful in cutting us out of the port contracts, it's not just business. It's a declaration of war." The word hung between us, heavy and ominous. War? In our world, business disputes don't end in court, Lily. They end in blood. His expression was hard now, the softer man from earlier replaced by something colder. "That's why I need this information. Not for profit, for survival. For my family, my people. For you, now that you're part of this. I'm not part of anything. I'm just listening to a conversation. You became part of this the moment you took my money, the moment you got in the car, the moment you said yes." He stood, moving around the table until he was beside me, looking down with those dark, intense eyes. "I need you to understand what you're involved in, Lily. This isn't a game. These aren't good people we're dealing with. If they found out you were working for me, you said I'd be safe. I will keep you safe, but you need to be smart, careful. If anything feels wrong, you walk away." He cupped my face in his hands, the gesture surprisingly gentle. "Promise me." "I promise." My voice sounded breathless, and I hated how much I liked the feel of his hands on my skin, the way his touch made me feel precious and protected. Good girl. He released me, but not before his thumb brushed my lower lip, a touch that felt deliberately intimate. "Marco will take you home, tomorrow, after your shift. He'll bring you back here. I want to hear everything." The drive home felt too short. I spent it staring out the window, my mind racing with everything Dante had told me, everything he'd implied. War, blood, danger. I should be terrified, should be planning my escape. Instead, I was planning what I'd wear tomorrow, what I'd say when I saw him again, how I'd prove that he was right to choose me. Back in my apartment, I held the recording pen, turning it over in my hands. Such a small thing, such a dangerous thing. Tomorrow night I'd cross a line I couldn't uncross. I'd become a spy, an informant, a part of something illegal and violent and wrong. But when I closed my eyes, I didn't see danger. I saw Dante's face, heard his voice calling me beautiful, felt his hands on my skin, claiming me as his. I was falling, and the worst part was, I didn't want anyone to catch me. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, I'd step fully into his world, into shadows and secrets and survival of a different kind. Tomorrow, I'd stop being invisible. I just hoped I'd still recognize myself when I looked in the mirror. Friday night at Celestino's felt different. Every sound was sharper, every shadow darker. The recording pen sat in my apron pocket like a live grenade, its weight a constant reminder of what I was about to do. My hands trembled as I tied my apron, and I had to grip the counter to steady myself. "You okay?" Maria asked, her pregnant belly brushing against the prep station as she reached for menus. "You look pale." "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Didn't sleep well." The dinner rush started at 7, and I moved through it on autopilot, taking orders, delivering food, smiling until my face hurt. But my eyes kept drifting to table 16, still empty, waiting. The pen in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. At 8:45, they arrived. 3 men, exactly as Dante had described. Anthony Russo came first, late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of man who expected doors to open before he reached them. James Chen followed, younger, sharper, his eyes constantly moving, cataloging threats. And finally, Marcus DeMarco, built like a boxer gone soft, with hands that looked like they'd broken things, including people. Castellano himself seated them at table 16, treating them with the careful deference reserved for dangerous guests. They ordered drinks, scotch, neat, all 3, and waved away menus. This wasn't about food. I watched from across the dining room, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. How was I supposed to get close? I was assigned to tables 8 through 12, nowhere near them. And even if I could get close, what excuse could I possibly have? Elena. Castellano appeared at my elbow, making me jump. Table 16 needs water. Now. I stared at him, wondering if Dante had arranged this, if Castellano was part of whatever web I'd stumbled into, but his expression gave nothing away. Just impatience, and the usual stress of a Friday night. Yes, sir. I grabbed the crystal pitcher with shaking hands. The walk to table 16 felt like walking to my execution. Each step brought me closer to a point of no return. I could still walk away, could still pretend I was just a server doing her job, could still preserve some piece of my soul that hadn't been bought. But then I thought of Dante's hands on my face, his voice calling me beautiful, the money in my freezer that meant I could finally breathe. And I kept walking. Gentlemen, my voice came out steadier than I felt. Water? They barely glanced at me. I was furniture, exactly as Dante had said. Invisible. I filled their glasses with careful precision, taking my time, my ears straining to catch their conversation. Can't trust the shipping manifests, Chen was saying, his voice low but clear. Not after the last incident. We need our own people on the docks. Already arranged, Russo replied, swirling his scotch. We have 3 foremen on the payroll, plus the union rep. As long as the Vitales don't find out before we're positioned, they won't. DeMarco's voice was rough, like gravel in a blender. Dante's been distracted lately. Word is he's got some new obsession keeping him occupied. My hand shook, nearly spilling water. Did they mean me? Did they already know? Good, Russo said. Let him be distracted. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll control 60% of port access. The Calabrese family will cut him out completely. I finished with the water, my mind racing. This was it. Exactly what Dante needed to know. Numbers, timeline, names. But I needed more. I needed details. Can I get you gentlemen anything else? I kept my voice meek, subservient. Appetizers? The special tonight is... We're fine. Chen cut me off without looking up. Go. I retreated, my heart sinking. That wasn't enough information. I had fragments, but Dante needed the complete picture. When did they plan to make their move? How were they bypassing security? What were the specific numbers on the port access? I circled back to my section, clearing tables with mechanical efficiency. But my mind was on table 16. They ordered food eventually, steaks, all rare, and I watched Maria deliver them, wishing I had an excuse to approach again. At 9:30, they ordered another round of drinks, and at 9:35, I saw my opportunity. Russo knocked over his water glass. It wasn't much, just a small spill, but it was enough. I grabbed a cloth and hurried over before any other server could respond. So sorry about that, I murmured, soaking up the water, taking my time. The recording pen in my pocket felt like it was vibrating, hungry for their words. Meeting with the union rep Tuesday, DeMarco was saying. Final signatures, money transfer, and we're clear. The Vitales won't even know until the first shipment gets redirected. What about Dante's inside man at the union? Chen asked. Tommy something? Sorrentino. Already handled. Russo's smile was cold. Tragic accident last week. Fell off a loading dock. Very unfortunate. They'd killed someone. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't just business maneuvering. These men had murdered someone to clear their path. And they were talking about it like discussing the weather, with me right there, invisible and insignificant. The warehouse coordinates for the first shipment? Chen pulled out his phone, swiping through something. We're using the Brooklyn facility, right? Building 7? 7C, specifically. Russo leaned back, satisfied. Calabrese wants the first delivery by the 15th. If we pull this off, we're looking at a 60-40 split in our favor. 12 million annually. 12 million. The number made my head spin. This was so far beyond anything I'd imagined. Not just territorial disputes, but enough money to kill for. To start a war over. All set. I straightened, the cloth soaked. Is there anything else I can get you? This time Russo actually looked at me. His eyes were cold, assessing, and for one terrifying moment, I thought he saw through me. Saw the recording pen, saw Dante's fingerprints on my skin, saw everything I was trying to hide. "What's your name?" he asked. My throat went dry. "Elena, sir. You're new here. 3 months." The lie I'd told Dante, now repeated. "Still learning the ropes." His gaze traveled over me, dismissive. "Work hard, Elena. Jobs like this don't grow on trees." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." I retreated, my legs trembling, sweat cold on my spine. I made it to the kitchen before the shaking got too bad. I leaned against the wall, pressing my hand over the pen in my pocket, feeling my heartbeat thunder against my palm. I'd done it. I'd gotten the information. Tuesday. Brooklyn facility. Building 7C. Union signatures. 12 million annually. Everything Dante needed to stop them. But that man, Tommy Sorrentino, was dead. And I was part of the world that had killed him now, even if I'd only listened. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Table 16 left around 11, tipping 20% like they hadn't just discussed murder and theft over their steaks. I cleared their table with shaking hands, finding nothing left behind but empty glasses and crumpled napkins. At midnight, when my shift finally ended, I changed out of my uniform in the staff bathroom and texted the number Dante had given me. "It's done." The response was immediate. "Marco is outside. Come now." The drive to the restaurant from last night felt different this time, heavier, weighted with what I now knew. Marco drove in his usual silence, but I caught him watching me in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. We pulled up to the same red door. Inside, the restaurant was closed now, empty except for staff cleaning up, but the woman in black was there, waiting, and she led me upstairs without a word. Dante stood by the windows of the private dining room, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. "Don't care what he thinks. Tell him if he wants to keep his fingers. He'll deliver by Monday." He ended the call and turned, his expression softening when he saw me. "Lily." Just my name, but the way he said it made something in my chest loosen. "I got it," I said, pulling out the recording pen. "Everything. Their timeline, the warehouse location, the money involved. All of it." He crossed the room in 3 strides, taking the pen but his eyes never leaving my face. "Are you hurt? Did they suspect anything?" "No. I was invisible, just like you said." But my voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly everything I'd held together came crashing down. "They killed someone, Dante, a man named Tommy Sorrentino. They talked about it like it was nothing. Tommy was one of mine." His voice went flat, dangerous. "He was feeding me information about union activities. I knew he'd gone missing last week, but I didn't know." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Come here." I moved toward him, and he pulled me into his arms, holding me against his chest. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, feel the heat of him through his shirt. The embrace was unexpected, comforting in a way I hadn't known I needed. "You did well, Lily. Better than well." His hand stroked my hair, the gesture protective. "I know this is hard. I know what I'm asking of you isn't fair or right. But you've given me what I need to protect my people, to stop a war before it starts." "What are you going to do?" I pulled back enough to look up at him. His expression was hard now, the gentle man replaced by something colder. "What needs to be done? Russo, Chen, DeMarco, they'll pay for Tommy. For thinking they could operate in my city without consequences." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "But that's not your concern. Your job is done. You're safe now." "Am I?" The question came out smaller than I intended. Russo looked at me tonight, really looked. "What if he remembers? What if he connects me to you? He won't." "But even if he did?" Dante's eyes went dark with promise. "I'd burn his world down before I let him touch you. You're under my protection, Lily. That's not just words. That's a blood oath in my world." The intensity of his words should have frightened me. Instead, they made me feel safer than I'd felt in years. How twisted was I, that a mafia boss's promise of violence felt like shelter. "I should go," I said, though I didn't move. "It's late, and Stay." He cut me off, his hands on my waist now, holding me in place. "Just for a while. Let me make sure you're okay. I don't need—" "I do." His forehead touched mine, his breath warm on my lips. I need to know you're safe, that tonight didn't break something in you, that I haven't ruined you for my own purposes. The admission was so raw, so unexpected, that I forgot to breathe. You haven't ruined me. Yet. His smile was bitter. Give it time. We stood like that for a long moment, connected at forehead and waist and breath, not quite kissing, but closer than we'd ever been. The air between us was charged, electric, full of things neither of us was saying. Finally, Dante pulled back, putting professional distance between us. Marco will take you home. Tomorrow. Tomorrow you rest. No work. No stress. I'll have food delivered. Anything you need. And Lily? He caught my hand before I could leave. Thank you for trusting me, for being brave, for everything. I wanted to say something profound, something that captured the complexity of what I felt. Fear and attraction and moral uncertainty all tangled together. But all that came out was, be careful, with Russo and the others. Please. His smile was genuine this time, almost warm. Worried about me? I'm invested now, I said, trying for lightness, self-interest. Liar. But his tone was affectionate. Go home, Lily. Sleep. Dream of better things than the darkness you saw tonight. The drive home was silent, but my mind was chaos. I'd done it, crossed the line, become a criminal, helped a mob boss plan whatever violence was coming. I should feel guilty, ashamed, horrified. Instead, I felt alive. Back in my apartment, I found a text from an unknown number. The envelope under your door. For services rendered. Sleep well. D. The envelope was thick, stuffed with cash. I didn't count it, couldn't bear to know what my complicity was worth in dollars. Instead, I shoved it in the freezer with the rest and collapsed on my futon, still wearing my clothes, too exhausted to care. But sleep didn't bring the peace Dante had wished for me. I dreamed of Table 16, of cold eyes, and casual murder. I dreamed of Tommy Sorrentino falling off a loading dock, dying for information just like I'd been gathering. I dreamed of Dante's hands on my face, both promise and threat. And when I woke up at dawn to the sound of sirens, I wondered whose world was burning tonight, and whether mine would be next. The sirens turned out to be a fire 3 blocks away. Nothing to do with me, with Dante, with any of it. But they'd woken me to a reality I couldn't ignore. I was waiting for violence now, expecting it, bracing for the moment everything would explode. Saturday passed in surreal normalcy. True to his word, Dante had food delivered. Not takeout, but real meals from restaurants I'd never afford. Brought by silent couriers who disappeared before I could tip them. There was also a box, expensive wrapping paper hiding clothes inside, a cashmere sweater, jeans that actually fit, boots that didn't have holes, and a note. You deserve better than duct tape. D. I should have been offended by the implication, by him dressing me like a doll. Instead, I put on the clothes and felt something dangerously close to cared for. Sunday, I tried to return to my old life. Laundry, cleaning, the mundane tasks that had once filled my days. But everything felt different now, like I was watching someone else's life through glass. The money in my freezer had grown to nearly $10,000. My rent was paid 3 months in advance. I had food, clothes, security. And all it had cost was my soul. Monday morning, I woke to 37 missed calls from the restaurant. When I finally answered, Castellano's voice was shaking. Where have you been? Jesus Christ, Elena, Lily, whoever you are. You need to get down here now. The police are asking about Friday night, about Table 16. My blood turned to ice. What happened? Just get here. And for God's sake, don't say anything until... He stopped himself. Just come. I dressed in my new clothes, my hands shaking so badly I could barely button the jeans. Had they found out? Had Russo remembered my face? Was I about to be arrested for conspiracy, for espionage, for being part of whatever Dante had done? The restaurant was closed when I arrived, but police cars crowded the street. Inside, officers were everywhere, taking statements, examining tables, talking in low voices that stopped when I walked in. Castellano rushed over, his face pale. They want to talk to you, he hissed. About the men at table 16. What you saw, what you heard. I told them you're just a server, you don't know anything, but Miss Martinez? A detective approached. Middle-aged, tired eyes, cheap suit. I'm Detective Morrison. I need to ask you a few questions about Friday night. My throat was dry. Of course. He led me to a booth, pulling out a notebook. You served 3 men at table 16 around 9 p.m. Anthony Russo, James Chen, Marcus DeMarco. Do you remember them? I brought them water, I said carefully, and cleared a spill. But I have a lot of tables. I don't really remember specifics. Did you hear any of their conversation? This was it. The moment where I either protected Dante or protected myself. If I told the truth, admitted I'd been recording them, I'd be complicit in whatever came next. But if I lied, and they somehow knew I was lying... No, I said, meeting his eyes. They barely acknowledged me. I was just there to serve. Morrison studied me for a long moment, and I forced myself not to look away, not to fidget, not to give anything away. Finally, he nodded. Marcus DeMarco was found dead last night. Execution style, professional hit. We're talking to everyone who had contact with him in his final days. The words hit me like a physical blow. Dead. Dante had moved fast, faster than I'd imagined. One of the 3 men from Friday night was already gone. I'm sorry, I managed. That's terrible. But I didn't really know him. I just brought water. And Anthony Russo is in the hospital. Morrison continued, watching my reaction. Critical condition. Someone ran his car off the road early this morning. And James Chen... He paused. Disappeared. His wife filed a missing persons report 2 hours ago. All 3. Dante had gone after all 3 of them in less than 48 hours. The scope of it, the speed, the absolute ruthlessness, it took my breath away. That's awful, I whispered, and meant it. These were terrible men who'd ordered murder, but they were still human. Still someone's husband, father, son. If you remember anything at all, you call me. Morrison handed me a card. Sometimes servers hear more than they realize. And if someone approached you, asked you questions about these men, offered you money. His eyes bored into mine. That's something we need to know. He knew. Maybe not the details, but he suspected. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. Of course. If I think of anything, I'll call. After an hour of more questions that went in circles, they finally let me go. Castellano pulled me aside as I was leaving, his grip painful on my arm. I don't know what you're involved in, but get out. Whatever Dante Vitale promised you, it's not worth it. These people, they're poison. They destroy everything they touch. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, pulling free. Yes, you do. His eyes were sad, knowing. I've seen this before. Girls like you, thinking you can play in their world without getting burned. You can't. Trust me, Lily. You can't. I left without responding, because what could I say? That it was too late? That I was already burned? That some part of me didn't want to escape? Outside, Marco was waiting by the car. He opened the door without a word, and I got in, too numb to do anything else. We drove to Dante's penthouse, the city passing by in a blur of gray and noise. This time, when the elevator opened, Dante was right there waiting. He looked different, harder, with shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, tie loose, and there was something wild in his expression that made my stomach clench. Are you okay? He grabbed my shoulders, eyes searching my face. The police. Did they hurt you? Threaten you? I'm fine. I didn't tell them anything. I stepped back, needing distance. You killed them. All 3 of them. DeMarco is dead. Russo will be soon. The doctors give him 24 hours. Chen... His jaw clenched. Chen is alive, for now. Giving him time to think about what happens to men who betray my family. The casual way he said it, like discussing a business transaction, made something in me recoil. They had families. DeMarco's wife will be taken care of. Dante cut me off. I'm not a monster, Lily. His widow will receive compensation. Enough to live comfortably. That's how we do things. We handle our business, but we don't leave innocents to suffer. Except you do suffer them to suffer, I said, anger finally breaking through the numbness. You killed their husbands, their fathers. Money doesn't fix that. No, it doesn't. He moved toward me, and I backed up until I hit the window. But Tommy Sorrentino had a family too. A wife, 2 daughters. And those men murdered him without blinking, then laughed about it over steak. Tell me, Lily, where's your moral outrage for them? He was right, and I hated it. Hated how he could twist everything, make violence seem justified, make me complicit in blood I'd never wanted on my hands. I can't do this, I whispered. I thought I could, but I can't. This world, your world, it's too dark, too violent. I'm not built for it. You are. He pressed closer, caging me against the glass, his hands on either side of my head. You survived foster care, poverty, a city that wanted you to fail. You're stronger than you know, Lily. Strong enough for this, for me. You're not listening. Tears burned my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. I don't want to be strong enough for this. I don't want to know how to rationalize murder. I don't want to be the person who helps make it happen. Then what do you want? His voice dropped, became something raw and desperate. Tell me, and I'll give it to you. Anything. Everything. I want to go back. The admission broke something in me before Friday night, before I knew what you were capable of. When you were just a dangerous fantasy instead of a reality I have to live with. You can't go back, Lily. Neither can I. His forehead touched mine, his breath ragged. From the moment I saw you, I knew you'd change everything, and I've tried. God. I've tried to keep distance, to protect you from this part of my life. But I can't. Because every time I close my eyes, I see you. Every decision I make, I'm thinking about keeping you safe. You've become my obsession. And obsessions don't let go. That's not love, Dante. That's possession. In my world, they're the same thing. His hands moved to my face, holding me like I was something precious and breakable. I possess you because I love you. I protect you because you're mine. And I'll burn down anyone who threatens you, because a world without you in it isn't worth existing in. The declaration should have terrified me. Should have sent me running. But standing there, pressed against glass 52 stories up, with his hands on my face and his heart in his words, I felt something I hadn't let myself acknowledge. I felt the same way. I hate you for this, I whispered. For making me care. For pulling me into darkness and calling it protection. For making me choose between my conscience and my heart. I know. His thumb caught a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. Hate me, Lily. It's safer than the alternative. What alternative? Loving me back. The words hung between us, a confession and a challenge. I should deny it. Should push him away. Should choose the moral high ground and walk away from all of this, but I was so tired of pretending, of fighting, of being alone. I already do, I admitted, the words feeling like surrender. God help me. I already do. His kiss was inevitable, necessary, like breathing after drowning. His mouth found mine with a hunger that spoke of restraint finally broken, of want too long denied. I kissed him back with equal desperation, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even as my mind screamed that this was wrong, this was dangerous, this was the final step into a world I could never escape. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay with me, not just tonight, always. Let me give you the life you deserve, safety, security, everything you've never had. As what? Your kept woman? Your spy? As mine? In whatever way you'll have me. His eyes were dark, sincere, terrifying in their intensity. I'm not a good man, Lily. I'll never be the hero of this story. But I swear to you, I will protect you, provide for you, worship you like the miracle you are, and anyone who tries to hurt you will learn exactly how ruthless I can be. It was the most twisted marriage proposal I'd never wanted, and yet, okay, I heard myself say. Okay. His smile was brilliant, transformative. He kissed me again, softer this time, like sealing a deal. You won't regret this. I already do. I said, but without heat, because the truth was more complicated than regret. The truth was that I'd found something in the darkness, someone who saw me, wanted me, would move heaven and earth to keep me. That it came wrapped in violence and blood didn't make it less real, just more complicated. The next weeks passed in a blur of transformation. Dante moved me into the penthouse, into a world of luxury I'd never imagined. He kept his promise. I was protected, provided for, given everything I needed and things I didn't know to want. I stopped working at Celestino's. Stopped pretending to be invisible. Instead, I became something else. Dante's partner, his confidant, the woman who stood beside him at events where powerful people whispered and made deals that would never see courtrooms. I learned the rules of his world: loyalty above all, family over everything, strength through unity. I learned which questions not to ask, which conversations not to overhear, which parts of his business to accept without understanding. And I learned that love in the shadows was different than love in the light, more intense, more precious, because it existed despite everything trying to destroy it. 6 months after that first night at Celestino's, Dante took me back to the restaurant. Table 16, private room, candlelight, and expensive wine. "I brought you here to ask you something," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a sapphire the color of midnight surrounded by diamonds. "Marry me, Lily, not because you're mine, though you are. Not because I've claimed you, though I have. Marry me because despite everything, the darkness, the violence, the impossible complications, we found each other. And that's worth fighting for." I looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the life spread before me like a feast after years of famine. I thought about the girl I'd been, invisible, exhausted, barely surviving. And the woman I'd become, seen, wanted, protected by a man who'd burn the world down to keep me safe. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd dreamed of as a child in foster care. It was better and worse, more real and more complicated. It was love mixed with danger, security purchased with blood, happiness that came with a cost I was still learning to pay, but it was mine. We were real, and in the end, that was enough. "Yes," I said, and let him slide the ring onto my finger. "Yes." He kissed me there in the private room where it had all begun, and somewhere in the restaurant below, life continued, servers rushing, guests eating, the world turning like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Lily Vitale, wife of a man the city whispered about, living in shadows but loved in the light he created just for me. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And I'd learned long ago that survival sometimes meant accepting imperfect things and making them beautiful anyway.